I'll start by saying, do you by any chance know what this might be? Well, let's call it the mystery object for now. What do wattle cranes tell us about our future? Well, I would say a lot. I'm a conservation biologist and a National Geographic explorer. I have over 15 years experience working within the conservation space, of which almost half of those I've spent them within the Okavango Delta. Other work which I've actually also done includes being involved in environmental impact assessment, reviewing environmental impact assessment reports prior to infrastructural development. I also have been involved in translocating wildlife for multiple reasons. I therefore invite you to please close your eyes as I take you into the Okavango, a place I call home. These are the waters flowing from the highlands of Angola, heading towards Botswana, the Okavango Delta. When those waters arrive there, the place becomes alive. Diverse wildlife survive within this place, all because of those waters coming from all the way from Angola. In Angola, it starts as rain, and when it arrives in Botswana, there is a wide array of places where that water goes. And when it reaches that Okavango Delta, the water brings life where both the people and wildlife within that area survive. And for that, I would like to say that the Okavango Delta, it's one of the last remaining intact places where wildlife, such as some of the remaining elephant population, are still surviving. Those are living alongside other wildlife, including the wild dog, the hippos, crocodiles, you can name it. But I would like to also say, if you could maybe now open your eyes, as I would like to ask that if that same beautiful place was to sound like this. Well, that would be disturbing, not only to you as a visitor, but also to us as the local residents, as well as the wildlife which is surviving within that area. And for that, it's of great importance to conserve that place, because there are multiple threats affecting the Okavango Delta. This includes upland water diversions, where water is being used for other purposes, where now lesser water is arriving in the delta. There are some water pollutions ongoing, and some infrastructural developments which are ongoing within the Okavango Delta. But for us, we actually need to be careful in terms of how we conserve the area, because without having to take care, we will definitely lose that place. So us as the local communities, we believe that that place is our home and we have to save it. So that's where the beautiful wattled crane comes in. Because this bird is a biological indicator of the health status of a wetland it's found in. And the Okavango Delta is one of those few places where this bird still exists in abundance. In Setswana, the wattled crane, we call it mogolodi. And that means a deliverer. Truly, this bird, it can deliver us from losing our own planet Earth. And as this bird, as a biological indicator, this bird lives in environments which are less disturbed, more pristine, and very natural. So that being said, other wildlife species also prefers to be within that same place. Example, the zebra, the hippos, elephants, as well as other wetland bird species, which also consider that same place as home. The wattled crane is considered vulnerable, but there are some instances where it's also felt to be endangered, because now there is lack of data which truly ascertains the extent to which maybe where could we categorize it as? So that's one of the things which actually initiated this conservation project, which I am spearheading. Because when wattled cranes relocate from places where we usually see them, that tells us or shows us that there might be some threats or some problem coming towards that location. So it's of great importance to try and get more insights about what is it that wattled cranes tell us about our future. To actually understand why study wattled cranes within the Okavango Delta, let's go back a few decades ago. They used to have a tsetse fly within the Okavango Delta, and it had devastating consequences because people and the wildlife and the livestock were actually suffering because of that. Within the Okavango Delta, it wasn't easy to have access to medical health facilities. So a lot of people, some died, some got sick because also the mode of transport, we use our local dugout canoe called mokoro. So with that, to transport a person from one location to the nearest health facility wasn't an easy task. So with the tsetse fly, the government of Botswana initiated a project where they wanted to eradicate the tsetse fly. They did an aerial survey where they flew and had an insecticide, poured an insecticide over the whole Okavango Delta. After that, they did 3 consecutive wattled crane research studies where they wanted to find out if maybe the insecticide used did actually had some impact on the environment. Fortunately, they found out that the wattled crane actually was minimally impacted. That actually was a good thing. But I would like to share with you that those studies were done over 2 decades ago. Ever since then, there haven't been any other project which actually went on to monitor the wattled crane population. With almost 20 years, more often than not, something might have happened to the wattled cranes. And if we don't know that, we definitely won't know whether our ecosystem is still healthy or not. We won't even know which parts of the delta are still healthy. That motivated for the inception of the Botswana Wattled Crane Research Project, which I am spearheading. Within this project, we execute multiple objectives. These objectives include conducting aerial surveys, where within the aerial survey, we are trying to close that data gap so that we now get to have most updated numbers of the wattled cranes. Because if you read in the documents, in whatever research documents, it shows that the Okavango Delta holds the largest single species concentration of wattled cranes. So if the last study was done over 2 decades ago, does that still hold water? We are trying to close that gap through aerial surveys. Another objective which we do includes deploying GPS trackers on wattled cranes. As we deploy the GPS trackers, we want to understand where wattled cranes go at what time of the year. And when we do that, it tells us more about which areas within the delta are still usable or are still habitable for both the wattled crane as well as other wetland bird species or even other wetland animal species which also use that same area as well. Prior to us having to execute the deploying the GPS trackers within the delta, we did a mini pilot project where we tried to understand how do wattled cranes behave when we deploy the GPS trackers. We did that with individuals within a zoo, and some of our observations were that so when you deploy the GPS trackers on the wattled crane, after the first week, the cranes, it kept on pecking on the tracker time and again. It spent most of the time doing that. But during the course of time, like a week later, going onwards, the birds actually started now to act like normal, as if maybe nothing had been done to them. And that, I feel it was relatable to some of us here who might be married, like me. It reminded me on the day when I got married. Because the first few days I put on this ring, I really used to feel the weight on my hand. But a few months later, I think I now can't even feel that I have something on my hand. And that was interesting for me to actually understand. And when we got to be happy about the trackers doing well, we then went out, caught the cranes, and now deployed the trackers, and I hope you can now see the mystery object. How many of you can see the mystery object? If you can, if you can't, this is a wattle crane hood. We put this hood on the head and part of the neck of a wattle crane, such that when you catch a crane and we put the hood on it, it helps to calm the bed down, and we can quickly process it, release it before we can spend a lot of time with holding onto the bed. That is very useful. One of the reasons why I actually also am going out every trip I go out with this hood is because catching birds within an open wetland system like the Okavango Delta, it's not easy. It had not been done before, and we were the first people to do it within the Okavango wetland system. So we had to attempt on multiple occasions. Hence, that being said, it wasn't an easy task. Another objective which we do, we monitor wattle crane nest. With the wattle crane nest, it gives us insights in terms of what happens, what are the nest activities ongoing around a wattle crane nest. Here's an example, a wattle crane nest, where the crane is just hidden behind those reeds there. There is a lot of activities which happens, and if we document those, we will be able to know if there might be some challenges in terms of breeding success. If there are some breeding failures, we will be able to tell what might have caused some of those breeding failures. Example, this one, there are those guys who just come to appreciate the hard work by others, like that bird there. That being said, if those eggs are along a highway, some guys just pass by. Fortunately, they didn't break on the egg. But there are those looking for something edible. That monitor lizard, your guess is equally the same as mine. What really happened after this picture? Because if we then are able to document this kind of information, we will be able to draw meaningful conclusions in terms of what transpires around a wattle crane nest. We have developed an app which can be used to document wattle crane behavior and whenever you sight it. When we document that, we will be able to know what do wattle cranes do. For example, when the flood waters are low, or even when the flood waters are high, when it's hot or when it's cooler. Being able to document that, we will be able maybe to relate that to different environmental variables, which can tell us a picture in terms of maybe the behavior of the wattle crane. Hence, the crane warning us well in time. This is a citizen science project where local communities and interested people come in, download the app, and actually document wattle cranes whenever they sighted one. So with the local communities, this is a project they've uptaken. They're also supporting the project. And it's of great importance to share that with local communities living within the Delta. One of the things which we have got to find out is that when you support the local communities, empower them, give them an opportunity to also not only spearhead, but guide towards how we execute a conservation project, we get interesting results because the sustainability of the research project is also long-lived. So I really motivate for involvement of local communities in conservation. There is one interesting example which I can share with you where the local communities shared some interesting information with me. Local communities within the Okavango Delta, one of the local community members called Abigail shared with me that when they see wattled cranes fly low closer to their community, that is a sign. They consider the wattled crane a messenger of good news. As when you see a wattled crane flying low, it means that the waters from the highlands of Angola are just about to arrive. This is Abigail. The flood waters from the Angolan highlands tells us that life actually truly have arrived, because when that water comes, there is a food source. Fish, they got fish from the waters. They also get water for drinking. Tourism potential opportunities come closer to their places. There is also an edible food product it's a root tuber. In Setswana, we call it tsui, And it only comes out when the flood waters arrive within the Okavango Delta. And I would lastly want to say that the Okavango Delta, the wattled crane, it's not only Botswana's heritage, but it also contributes as a global warning system individual. That being said, us having to be able to populate this kind of information, it helps us to actually also be able to address challenges sooner than later. So when wattled cranes go silent, it's not only the Delta that suffers, it's all of us. The big question is, will we all be able to listen attentively to the warnings and act well in time? Thank you.